Namaskar and welcome back to my story time. We are on episode number 6 of our Ramayana series. In our last episode, Sri Ram, Lakshman and Sita, they were in the forest and they had met Shabri, who Ram had blessed. Now, as the three of them ventured along the forest, they found a place, Panchavati, where they built a home. That home was a hut. What is a hut, you may ask? Hut is like a temporary home. It's built with materials you can find in a forest, like leaves, wood, maybe some twigs. So you use all those materials and then you make a hut. So Ram and Lakshman worked very hard to build that hut. And they had established a routine every day. Now, one day, there was this demoness. Who is demoness? Think of her as kind of like a villain in superhero movies, but a female villain. So, one day she was going through the forest and she saw Ram and she thought, I like Ram. So she went up to Ram and she said, Ram, I want to marry you. Now Ram said, sorry, I'm already married. Now why do you think she didn't know that Ram was married? Because back then, you didn't wear wedding bands. So there wasn't really a way for them to tell if someone was married. So this demoness Surpankha, she couldn't tell if Ram was married. Then she turned to Lakshman and said, Lakshman, will you marry me? Lakshman said, no. Now Surpankha got upset. How dare these two boys tell me they can't marry me? So she said, I am threatening to hurt Sita. And our Lakshman is a little hot-headed, whereas Ram is a cool and a calm kind of a guy. So Lakshman got upset and got in a fight with her. Now in that fight, he ended up chopping off her nose. She was very upset. She felt humiliated and insulted. She went back home to her brother. Do you know who her brother was? He was the king of Lanka, Ravana. There enters our main villain of the story, Ravana. It's said that Ravana had 10 heads. He didn't really physically have 10 heads, but he was smart enough to have brains of 10 people. That's how smart he was. So her sister goes up to him and says, Bhaiya, this man, Ram and Lakshman, they hurt me. So Ravan is upset with them. She says, Bhaiya, you have to go set the record straight. So now, Ravan, huffing and puffing, plots a revenge. Now, do you think Surpankha told him the full story? I don't think so either. She didn't tell her brother that they didn't really attack her. They just were protecting Sita because she threatened to hurt Sita. So she kind of left that story out and she only told her brother half the story. Now Ravan, as he starts plotting revenge, he goes to another demon and says, you are going to transform yourself as a golden deer. So enter a golden deer. Sita looks at that deer and says, how beautiful. Ram, please go get me that deer. Ram says, of course, my love. But Lakshman, you make sure you don't leave Sita alone while I go after the deer. So Ram left. And then, as Sita and Lakshman waited for a long time, Sita started to get worried. Why isn't Ram back yet? And then they heard a cry. Come help me! Sita thought, oh no, my dear Ram is in trouble. Lakshman, you have to go help your brother. Lakshman, knowing very well his brother's strengths, my brother will be fine. He will be able to take care of himself. I can't leave you alone. I promised my brother to protect you. But Sita was insistent. She said, I will be fine. You just leave. So Lakshman, with his arrow, he prayed and created a magical circle. It was called Lakshman Rekha. And asked Sita not to cross that circle. Said, as long as you're within the boundary of the circle, you will be protected. Now enters a sage. That sage was asking for food. So he reached this hut and he said, may I please get some food for today? And Sita, who was inside the hut, opened the door. Of course, but can you just wait till my husband comes back? The sage said, now you're being kind of rude because I'm hungry. So then Sita, she stepped out of the circle to give this sage some food. And you come here, Sita. That sage turned into a Ravana. He grabbed Sita and took her on his chariot and kidnapped her from Ram and Lakshman. What happens next? Stay tuned for episode 7.